Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our Tuesday night interviews with fascinating people. And today we got, not the first time, but it's a rarity where we upgrade someone from audience member to subject. We get to know our people. So one of our regular participants is right here in front of you, Reb Pesach. And this is also a little bit of a preview because he's going to be participating in the Farbrengen at Beis Menachem on Yud Shvat. Coming up in a couple of weeks, we'll have a full meal and a big Farbrengen. This year marks 75 years since the passing of the previous Rebbe. So we thought it would be appropriate to make a special Shabbos program. And we asked Pesach to speak, and we said, sure, let's come on Tuesday night and let's give it a whirl. So Pesach, thank you for agreeing to step out of the audience and onto the spotlight and be our specially featured guest tonight. And we want to hear your story. So give us a little background. Where were you born? What was your upbringing like? And what was your first encounter with Chabad that brought you to be this guest speaker on Tuesday night in our Zoom?
Sure. Thanks for having me here. Like you said, long-time listener, first-time interviewee. Um, I was born in Dayton, Ohio, actually,
Oh,
and I was born about 3 months after my parents immigrated to America from Belarus, or as the Chabad Forum call it, White Russia. And then when I was 2, we moved to Rogers Park. When I was 4, we moved to Glenview, and I lived in Glenview until I was about 35.
oh boy.
So
And what was your
30 years.
upbringing like? Were you very affiliated with the Jewish community? What, give us a little sense of what little Pesach program looked like. Your beard was probably not as long when you were 3, but give us a little bit about what your life was like.
It was not a lot of Yiddishkeit. My parents grew up in communist Russia, and so not only was religion not promoted or even frowned upon, but as Jews, they were like they were like made fun of. Whenever I heard stories, it was always about how they were like they didn't want to like boast or um, advertise the fact that they were Jewish. And so when they came to America, they didn't really practice Judaism, although there were flashes of Yiddishkeit in my life, thank God. For instance, the organization that brought them to America was, I believe, something similar to the ARC here in Chicago, where they had like a sponsor and that family would help them. They were known to be Jewish. I think even their passport, instead of for nationality, said Jewish instead of Russian, that sort of thing, back in the late 70s. So I was born in America in Dayton, Ohio. I was on the cover of the Dayton Herald the day I was born. My parents still have the newspaper for being the first Russian American born in America
And
in Dayton, Ohio.
that's now going to be the second biggest media experience of your life now that you've been displaced by being on
Right.
our Zoom.
Um, and so um, because they were sponsored by this family, we actually were in touch with the family until um, first the matriarch passed away and the patriarch passed away probably about 5 or 6 years ago.
Was this
So
family related to you? How did your parents get connected? Do you know
no, they
that
were like
backstory?
they were volunteers. They were an affluent family. The patriarch owned, I want to say, like a dozen Domino's franchises
And how
in
did he get
Ohio.
connected with your family?
I, again, like volunteer. I don't know exactly how they got chosen for our family. My dad's sister was actually in Dayton first, for about a year, and that's why we eventually got to Dayton as opposed to any other city in America. Um, and but they were just philanthropists. The patriarch was a franchise owner, and the matriarch was, she did chesed. This was like her hobbies. She helped families,
Amazing.
and they helped my parents out a lot. But I bring them up because of them. When I was eight days old, I had an Orthodox bris and an Orthodox shul. Like my parents still had the records of it because these were the Jews that helped them while they were in Dayton.
Oh, wow. So
So
you moved to Glenview when you're a little kid and you went to a public
four,
school in Glenview.
yes,
And where did you get exposed to Chabad? What was that story?
I knew you were going to ask me that. So
Well, I
I
wasn't
did have
just going to ask
flashes
you
of
about playing
right,
hockey.
right, right. I did have flashes of Chabad. For instance, my parents, who were Russian, um, if I'm sure people know Rabbi Shimon, and at the time it was Rabbi Katz. Now his name is Rabbi Herskovitz. Every year on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, they would fill a field house with Russian Jews for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And I remember as a little kid running around the gym. I remember, everybody standing outside smoking while the services were going on inside. And then when it came time to auction off the honors, everybody went inside. Like that was the favorite thing for these, Russian Jews. They didn't practice religion, but they wanted to at least show that they were successful and they had made it. So we did that a couple of years, and I remembered it even as a little kid running around. And so when my grandmother passed away, I was 19 or 18. We went to Rabbi, he was still Rabbi Katz at the time. That was who my parents knew. My grandmother passed away in Israel, but we went to him and he did, like memorial and Shiva type stuff and really helped my parents out, was really
And how
there.
old were you at this time?
I was nine, I was 18 or 19. She passed
19.
away. I just turned 19. She passed away in February and I turned 19 in January. I was away at school. I came home. My mom went to Israel and she came back. And so we went there. And so again, we were like, I had experiences with free. We went to Rabbi Notik in Chicago for, I remember at least one Purim that we were there. It was like Purim in Italy. But my, I guess, um, my chapter, my history in Chabad was I used to have I'm an attorney. I used to have a law office in Skokie. When I was an attorney, when I was sworn into the bar, was the first year that Illinois required CLEs, which are continuing legal education credits, which Chabad jumped on right away, and they offered one of the JLI club courses, was certified for CLE credits, and Rabbi Posner from Skokie came to our office and solicited the course, and that's what started my relationship with Rabbi Posner.
So that's amazing. And you were just starting out in your law career. Did you have your own firm? You just worked in the firm and you happened to show up there?
I was probably the closest description would be that I was kind of like an apprentice.
Hmm.
So an established attorney, solo practitioner, allowed me to work in his office. I had a desk and I covered court calls for him because he didn't like going to court while learning the ropes and trying to get my own clients. So it was like I had a desk in another attorney's office and he knew that attorney. I found out years later that he didn't just knock on the door. He had an appointment with this other attorney to talk
Did
about this
that other
course.
attorney take the JLI course?
Yes, we both did. Yeah.
As you did. So let me ask you, if you were to look back, what specifically attracted you? Was it just an easy way to get your CLE credits, or was there something there that maybe you weren't conscious of that in the look back, that's what really caught your eye when Rabbi Yochanan Posner shows up and says, we're teaching a course in that you can get CLE credits for?
I took the course just because I wanted the CLE credits. I believe he even gave us a discount, and it was like an interesting way to get in. Maybe there was even a little convincing by this other attorney um, in Skokie, but that was what started my relationship with him. And then every time there was another JLI course, he called me and he wanted me to get the course. It I bring that up to say that it didn't stick at first. So it took a couple of phone calls. Um, about almost about 2 years later, I was working at a firm, working, 80, 90 hours a week, 7 days a week. Like I was only working. And so I actually, after all the times that he reached out to me, I finally called him one day and I said, I want something more out of life. I don't want just to um, work and sleep and work and sleep. And we met for lunch, and he was just great. He listened. He was just like a good person. He gave a lot of good life advice. I say life advice in a very general term. It wasn't um, like he guided me in after just one lunch, but we had like a very meaningful conversation. And he said, "I want to buy two books for you." And again, at the time, I didn't know much about Yiddishkeit. So he said, I want to, number one is toward the meaning. I said, you don't have to buy me the book. Just tell me the title. I'll go buy the book. He's like, I don't know if it's so simple. I was like, just tell me the names and I'll go get them. And so he said, Toward a Meaningful Life and The Sitter. So I went on Amazon, which at the time I think was only selling books. Um, and I got Toward a Meaningful Life, but then, I couldn't find The Sitter, or I found a million of them. I didn't know what he meant by sitter exactly. And so I went back to him and he had a copy and he gave it to me and I still have it now. I use it. I really like it a lot because it's made out of real. It's a Tilas Hashem, but it's made out of really good quality, unlike the ones that they put out now. And that's what started our real relationship. And we met, started talking about Towards a Meaningful Life, and we even learned a little bit in the mornings. Like
So you were
um,
still living in Glenview at the time and
yes,
commuting to Skokie?
at this time, no. By the time I met him for lunch, I was working in Peterson Park. I
Uh-huh.
was working
Okay.
for a firm. My apprenticeship, we'll call it, kind of ended, and I got a corporate job.
Okay. And then you're meeting with Rabbi Posner from time to time
Did
and
you just
take us.
freeze or did I freeze?
I hear you and see you.
Did I freeze or
I
did you freeze?
You're doing great. I hear
Okay.
you and I see you. Okay. We're
All right.
back on.
Yes.
So you met with Rabbi Posner, you're meeting with him, somewhat sporadically, regularly, and take us to the next step.
We had lunch. Um, at this was I remember it was when Main Pizza was still on Tui.
Hmm.
I, I think where Zalman's is now.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and so I read Towards a Meaningful Life. We talked a little bit, but I also read another book which had I guess guided me in my Yiddishkeit, which was L'chaim, to Life by Harold Kushner.
Okay.
Kushner.
Yeah.
And so it said in there, when you really want to be uplifted, um, you go to shul, you should go on high holidays, Rosh Hashanah. And so I went on Rosh Hashanah. So this is my like the beginning of my journey. I went on Rosh Hashanah, and I believe on the first after shul, after davening, I sat there, reading English. I believe Rabbi Posner invited me to dinner. I looked up the timing in preparation for this. So it was a Wednesday night that year. So he invited me for dinner, and I said, "Oh, I have plans. I'm going to go with my parents." But I remember thinking it's kind of weird. He doesn't know, like, yeah, we met for lunch, but like he invited me to his home.
You didn't do a
Um,
background check to make sure you
it's not even just
fingerprints.
that, but like on Rosh Hashanah, it's like a family thing, and you have your invitations already passed out, and he just, oh, come over tonight, for
It was
Rosh Hashanah. I
strange.
remember just feeling kind of weird, but but then I remember he said, "I'll see you tomorrow," when I was leaving the shul, and maybe he even invited me that night. But basically, he said, "I'll see you tomorrow," and I said, "Why would you see me tomorrow?" And he's like, "Tomorrow's Rosh Hashanah." I said, "Oh, I must have messed up. I thought tonight was Rosh Hashanah." He's like, "No, no, Rosh Hashanah is two days." And so I went to dinner at his house, and I just had an amazing experience with his kids. Half of his kids are grown up now, but they were all like cute, little, and like just it was just so like heartwarming. Like I never really thought I wanted that. I wanted like the family life. I always thought I'd be like just a single lawyer. And I even told people that, but I really enjoyed the dinner with his family. And so then he walked me to the door. He said, "I'll see you tomorrow." And I said, "Oh, what's tomorrow? Rosh Hashanah again?" He said, "No, tomorrow's Shabbos." So it was Shabbos. So I went on Friday night. And again, I'm sitting in shul and he says, um, "Do you want to come over for dinner tonight?" It's like, "Okay, I guess I'll come over for dinner, tonight too." And then again had a great meal. It was like the conversations were real. I forgot to mention that even on Rosh Hashanah. Like I just really enjoyed the conversations. They weren't like current affairs. They weren't like gossip. It was like real conversations about life and Torah. And again, he walked me to the door on Friday night and he said, I'll see you tomorrow." And I was like, "Okay, well, now what are you gonna see me tomorrow for?" And that's what he said. Well, in our tradition, we have something called chazak. This is the first time I've ever heard of chazak. He's like, if you do something three times, you have to keep doing it. Um, so then I went back to shul the next day. Uh, Someone else invited me for a meal. I remember that. I was like, never saw this person in my life. He sat behind me in shul and he said, "Do you have any meals for lunch?" And I said, "I don't have any plans. I was just going to go across the street maybe and get some food," thinking I was going to be smart and, you know, refer to a kosher restaurant. At the time, High Life was across the street from the shul. He's like, "I don't think they're open. Why don't you come over to my house for lunch?" Some guy, never met him before. I didn't even know his name. And I said, "Oh, that's okay. I'll check anyways." He's like, "No, I'm pretty sure they're not open. Why don't you come over?" And Rabbi Posner like was standing behind him, and I looked at him, and he just nodded. And I said, "Okay, I'll come over for lunch." And that's what started my Chabad exposure to, like um, the invitations and like um, people inviting me into their home and treating me like family with meals and stuff like that. So after
If you were
that,
to look back and, let's say you were advising Chabad Shliach, what can you pinpoint? What was it that really made you? I mean, we see you now with the beard and yarmulke. You got Howard Street in the background. I mean, the 770 in the background.
Eastern
You,
Parkway.
yeah, you obviously, drinking the Kool-Aid. What, if you look back, would you say, if you could pinpoint, really was attractive? Was it the academic side? Was it the history? Was it the community? Was it family? Was it just the good food? What would you say really sort of stood out and was
So
meaningful to you?
even if you didn't list it off, it was 100% community and family. Um, so what happened, to continue the story a little bit, is I started going to shul every day. I was
In
driving
Skokie.
in Skokie. Yes, I was driving from Glenview to Skokie. I didn't even know there was a Glenview Chabad at the time. This is the sort of like exposure I had, and so I was going every day, and it was just the community. So uh, we
You
had
say
Rosh
you're going
Hashanah
every day for chakras every day.
for chakras. I would wake up in the morning, drive to
Wow. So you're
chakras.
boom, you're totally in there.
It was
Fulfilling the
just,
whole thing.
yeah, he said, come tomorrow, I'll see you tomorrow. And so and so what happened was, the after when I came the next day, it's like, okay, why don't I help you put on tefillin? Didn't know what tefillin was. I think maybe one time I in free, one of the Bachram in free asked me to put on tefillin, and I just stood there and he did it. Like I didn't even know what it was. My bar mitzvah, I did have a bar mitzvah, but I didn't start putting on tefillin then. And he said wanted to um he wanted to put on tefillin, so I was putting on tefillin. I was using the shuls to fill in the morning, davening with it, and somebody came back from the oil trip. Again, never met this person in my life, and he walked up to me in shul before davening, and he said, "So I hear you just started putting on tefillin." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, and he's like, I just remember his face. He was like holding his chin. He's like, "If we got you a pair of tefillin, would you put them on every day?" And I had already started my mentality of just agreeing to everything. Like I was just so like comfortable and so welcome that I felt like whatever somebody was suggesting to me was for my good. Like it was for the good. There was no like hidden agenda. There was no trying to trick me, or this guy wasn't trying to sell me anything. He's like, if I got you a pair of tefillin,
Would you buy a timeshare
would
in
you put it
Florida?
on every day? And I said yes. And I remember we went into the kitchen. He's like, oh, come with me. We went into the kitchen. We said l'chaim. So again, Chabad says l'chaim at 6:30 in the morning. And and then he's like, we're gonna have to film for you by the end of the week. And sure enough, on Friday I came for chakras and I had my own pair of tefillin. I didn't even know till months later how much tefillin cost. And just events like that. And I was like, okay, so now I have tefillin. So now I'm going every morning and I'm putting on tefillin. Um, other stories like that. I pulled up to Chabad between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for Mincha, and I didn't see Rabbi Posner inside, so I went around to the back, and he had a truck, and he had chickens on the truck, and he's loading these chickens into crates, and he's like, "Can you help me put these chickens in the crates?" was like, sure. Again, I was just like so comfortable. I was like, sure. And then he's like, okay, and then let me show you something. He's like, gave me a laminated card and he said, swing this around your head and say this.
Hey, now you're putting me on.
It, so like just right. We laughed about it like a year later on Yom Kippur when we actually did it, and it was more meaningful to me. It was more like spiritual than just the action. He's like, I always wonder what you thought that first time when you pulled up and I asked you to put a chicken into a crate. Um, but fast forward, so went like this for a year. I was going to Chabad every day, and I was driving on Shabbos. And I remember one time I asked to speak with him, and I said to him, I feel bad that I'm driving on Shabbos and I see people walking. And this was when Rabbi Posner said one of the most meaningful things to me, and he said, Yiddishkeit is not black and white. There's a lot of gray. So if you don't feel comfortable driving, then just park a little further. He didn't say you can't drive on Shabbos, you have to walk. He said park a little further, which not only meant a lot to me that he was so like um, understanding, but also I thought it was ingenious of him because we were in Skokie, and no matter how far I parked, there were people walking. So I parked further and further every week, and there were people walking, walking. And one day, after a meal, again, now other families are inviting me every night, and I don't think it's so weird anymore. Maybe I don't know the people, I don't know their last name, I don't know I show up to these meals, and maybe I know one of their kids, and I sit down, and there's seven of them, uh, and so instead of walking back to my car after the meal, I walked home to Glenview.
Oh, wow. How far is that?
It took about 2 hours.
Oh, my goodness.
So again, I just feel like I was so comfortable in with this community and like with the families that just something hit me. I don't want to drive on Shabbos anymore. And so I walked home, and then for about a month and a half, 2 months, I woke up 2 hours earlier every so I drove on Friday night, walked home, and then I woke up 2 hours earlier every Saturday morning, and I walked to shul.
Oh,
And then
wow.
I heard you say Jay earlier. Mr.
Yeah.
Pine remembers an individual by the name of Mr. Phillips, I'm sure. He was a character. He was very welcoming. He, he was
Yes.
an amazing guy. Um, and so people started to catch on that I was walking to shul. Like I was wearing a suit and gym shoes. I was sweating. Rabbi Posner would sneak cups of water to me during services, stuff like that. And so one Friday afternoon, I get an email from Mr. Phillips, and it said, "Tonight, instead of walking home, you're going to spend the night at my house." Again, I had no idea what that meant. What do you mean I'm going to spend the night in your house? You know, um, like I'm going to move in with you, or I got to pay you rent. It was just so awkward. It was so like not anything I was familiar with. I couldn't even relate to it at all. But he said, "You're gonna stay with me this Shabbos, and then this is where you're staying for the next six Shabbos." It was like a Google sheet. He emailed me, and then the Google sheet started growing. And for the next 2 years, I stayed at a different person's house in Skokie. People got on the list, people got off the list, and that's why I say the community and the families was really what changed my life into what you see before you today.
That is
Um,
amazing. That's a beautiful, beautiful story. Thank you for sharing it. And as I said, on Yud Shvat, which is
I'll,
coming
I'll
up in a
elaborate
couple
more
of
in more
weeks, yeah,
specifics like
three
that. Yeah.
Shabboses. We're having a big Shabbos Kiddush. It's 75th anniversary of the passing of the previous Rebbe. And Pesach is going to be one of the featured speakers. So this was a little preview, a little taste. And if
Mm.
somebody wants to unmute and ask him a question, otherwise we do want to give him a
Yes.
chance to. Okay, Bachi, say it loud and proud.
I'm waiting for when you met your wife because that's when I met you downtown. I remember when you first came downtown and you guys look so cute together.
Thank you. We're actually separated now. I gave her the get, but I
Oh,
really
I'm
appreciate
sorry.
that. It's all right. It's another one of these stories where I didn't really get into this because we were limited on time, but my life very quickly turned from like Gashmias to Ruchnias and spiritual, and I started looking for a wife because I also wanted a family. I wanted to have these big meals, and I wanted people to spend the night at my house and come to my meals, and all of this stuff. And so it wasn't working out. I went on a couple of dates. I went to Canada, I went to New York, and one day Rabbi Posner said, there's this program in Morristown called Taste of Yeshiva. It's not really, you're not really the demographic, but I talked to Rabbi Hecht and he said, give him a call and, convince him that you should go. So I talked to him and I didn't even have to convince him. He's like, yes, absolutely, you go. Rabbi Posner probably told him a little bit about my story. And so I had been calling her. She never picked up. She never picked up. And then I was in Morristown, and it was Hey Tavis. So then the next night, Vav Tavis, she called me, and then I got back into town the day after my birthday. We went on our first date, and then 99 days later, I proposed, and 108 days later after that, we got married. So I had to go to Morristown and completely submerged. Like I didn't have my phone with me. I didn't do anything related to work at all. And for 7 days, I lived like a bacher. And once I lived like a bacher, then I was ready to get married. And that's how I met my wife. And we probably met in Gold Coast. I remember it from Skokie too, but in Gold Coast is where she
Yes,
was.
Gold Coast.
Yeah. Rabbi Ben Hune officiated our wedding. So again,
What a story,
my
Pesach here. It's
story.
an inspirational story. Yasher Koach, Rabbi
Yeah.
Posner. Thank you for sharing it. And like I
Yes,
said, in a
yeah.
couple of weeks, Pesach is going to be speaking at the Beis Menachem Big Farbrengen and Shabbos meal in honor of 75th anniversary of the Yud Shvat, and everybody is welcome to come. Okay. Someone's
Mazel
got a
tov.
quick question.
Homemade.
Jump in.
You're doing good.
Otherwise, we're going to say goodnight.
Wait, let me
Thank you.
just say let me just say one
Sure,
thing. This
sure.
is Jay's wife, Pesach. I don't even know if you know who I am. I'm Jay's
I
wife.
do, of
I
course.
mean, I've seen you. You did a wonderful job this evening. It
Yes.
was actually very, very interesting.
They only get to the most interesting people.
Thank you, thank you. You
They
know,
only
when
get to.
you live your life and I'm like in it, so I don't have like a bird's eye view. So when Rabbi Epstein, he actually asked me for was it you for Gimel
Yutas
Tammuz?
Kislev.
Oh,
Yutas
Utah
Kislev.
Kislev. And I started thinking about these things, and I'm like, actually, this is pretty
This is
interesting.
a great story. This is a beautiful
And I have
story.
other stories like that, and I know the Pines from Skokie, and like they're just amazing families there, and just it was like so much like spirituality, community, and but I'll talk more about that.
Yeah, this is a little
Right.
teaser. You got to come 3 weeks. 10th of Shvat. It's the 75th anniversary this year. It turns out to be on Shabbos since the passing of the previous Rebbe, and we're making a full meal. And Pesach is going to be one of the speakers. We also have another speaker, and we'll do some learning, and it's a whole day. And we hope that you will join us. That's in a couple of weeks.
Pesach,
Okay.
if we're not there, we're on shlichus, so we apologize.
Mr. Pine, you're always on shlichus, even if you're
Right.
there. Everybody is always on a mission from Hashem. We're
Yes.
never, no
That's
days
lacha
off.
rava.
That's lacha. Okay. Thank you, Pesach, for sharing this
Thank
beautiful
you.
story, inspirational.
My
And
pleasure.
we'll see you all tomorrow night. Good night, everybody.
Right.
Thank
Good
you all for
night.
joining. Good night. Good night.
Right.
Good night. Good night. Good night.